Welcome to my channel. I'm Elizabeth Liz Muschett, and today we're talking about Discovering Midpoints Part 5 with John Foster. Welcome, John. How are you today?
Hey Liz, good to see you.
Glad to
I'm
have you.
good. I'm excellent. I'm raring and ready to go.
Okay, we'll get started. And John is an astrologer and a software developer, teacher and lecturer, and a graduate of Noel Till's master degree certification. I'm an astrologer, author, and intuitive. And John's website is astroperegrine.com, and my website is alightpath.com. And we always enjoy hearing from you. And so I'll let you take it away, John.
Okay, so I'm going to cut down on the cheat sheet stuff here. If I say anything that you appears on here, if I say planet or point, this is what I mean. And you all know the symbology by now because you're all astrologers. And if you're not an astrologer, you will quickly learn your language because you're going to have a hard time getting further in astrology if you don't know what the glyphs are. And so I'm not going to go over them again. We've went over them for the last 4 episodes. So, but they're there just in case somebody wants to look at them. Okay.
Thanks.
So today I thought we talked about midpoints in general. We talked about how they're created. We talked about how much more information they give. We talked about the most important midpoints and midpoint pictures that there are. And we did a pretty good job, I think, of going over the Sun Moon midpoint, the Ascendant MC, which we're going to cover in more detail today, the Jupiter Pluto, and the Saturn Pluto midpoints, because you always want to keep your eyes on those four. But the one that I find that people, for some reason, is too abstract. For some reason, people get it if Jupiter and Pluto are together. They kind of understand that this is really going to make a big Jupiter thing going on, right? And if Saturn and Pluto are there, they're going like, oh crap, this is just feels like this is a heavy thing. But when you say Ascendant MC, does anything come to the mind? For most people, no.
Right.
So what I thought that this might be a good research project for myself as well as for other people to get a better understanding of it. And so what I thought we'd do today is we'll start with it with the components, which are if you have an ascendant MC, then obviously you have an ascendant and what that represents. And then you have the MC or the midheaven and what that represents. So let's look at what the ascendant does represent. And of course, there's lots of keywords out there that you can use. But what I found helps me is that I view it as personal image. I view the ascendant opposite the descendant. So your personal image is the ascendant, your public image, if you will, of your personal image is your descendant. It's kind of how other people see you. And what does personal image mean? Well, personal image is what you want people to see you as. So this is your personal projection or the initial impression you would like to make on others. The seventh house is the actual first impression that you make on others. But this is what you are trying to impress upon others. Now, why are you trying to impress upon others an image of yourself? Because in this world, we live in the shadow of everybody's expectations, do we not?
Yes.
So we have our self-expression, but really what we have, that self-expression is kind of a mask that we wear. That's why they call the ascendant the facade. And that ascendant and that facade is built based on what you think in whatever level of environment you are. So if you're with a family, it may be one thing. If you're with a group of astrologers, it may be something different. If you're out there in a business opportunity, it may be something different. And what that different is the mask that you're wearing at that time. Now, that mask may not in fact be you, because you may want to be like, let's say you have Uranus on your ascendant. You don't want to listen to anybody. You don't want anybody telling you what to do. You want to do your own thing. You want to do when you want it. But now you work for somebody and your boss says, you know what? I need this on this date and on this time. So you sit there and you go, oh, sure, boss, I'm going to do this for you. But inside you're going like, oh, this just grates me. Okay. That's your facade. That's an example of your facade. It's your attempt to be what you think other people want you to be in that particular circumstance. Okay. Now, it also has to do with your personal identity, because it's obviously, if you are expressing yourself in a certain way, then you view yourself as a certain way. And that development starts with the ascendant. Any aspects to the ascendant are part of that developmental profile. We're not going to get into that today, but it's part of the personal identity development. And it's also potentially part of the health or illness profile. Okay. Because when you were born in this world, you're quite vulnerable at that point. And a lot of people who have ascendants, which have a lot of challenging aspects to them, often are sickly when they're young. And so, somewhere way back in the annals of astrology, they came out with the keyword that this could be sickness or illness or something along that line. So, I just throw it in there because it's also possible that something you need to think about when these aspects are occurring. Okay. So, the next one is the midheaven. Now, obviously, if you have a personal image that you're trying to present, and this is you doing it to the public, this is where you do it in terms of your profession, in terms of the public persona that you want to project. It's also a kind of a projection. Even the IC is kind of a projection, but it's a projection to your family and kind of inside of what's happening in your ears. They're all of the angles, I think, are projections of one form or another. So in the midheaven, it's a public image, it's a public persona, or the professional projection. We already know it has to do with career. And if it has to do with career, then naturally it has to do with our ambition and our life purpose, or it should have to do with our life purpose. If it doesn't have to do with our life purpose, then our midheaven is not serving the purpose that it's designed to be. And we're not going to feel very happy about the profession that we're in, because we're not in alignment with what our life purpose is going to be, which we all kind of intuitively know. It has to also do with ego status, the actual achievement, and any influence as a result of the energies that you've developed in the midheaven area. And it also has to do with any outer recognition, and therefore any reputation that's developed as a result of the midheaven. Okay, so you have the ascendant and the midheaven. You have all of those things. So now, what happens when you put them together? Okay, so now what we have is we have an integration of the personal and the public. Okay, so before they were separate things. Well, at a midpoint, it's both of them merging at that point, becoming a focus at that point. Okay, so it's personal and public. It's personal identity and public identity merged together. It's how you express. Here's the way I like to think of it. It's how you express your true self personally and professionally. And if you are expressing your true self personally and professionally, you are then going to be appreciated for being your true self. Hopefully. Hopefully, because sometimes when you are yourself, other people are not very happy with that. Okay. So, and another thing that's interesting is, again, it's a midpoint. And, if you remember the Saturn cycle, and Saturn makes its way around the chart every 28 to 30 years. So it has two peaks of development. One is when it hits the MC. The other is when it hits the ascendant, when it follows another, depending on the person's chart, approximately 7 years or so. Isn't it interesting that right between them is actually another midpoint and probably another peak, a mid peak, if you will, right between those. So I started to tell myself to keep my eye on what's happening when people's Saturn goes over that particular point, either by solar arc or by transit, or maybe the secondary progressed moon as it goes across. Wanting to find out just how sensitive that spot actually is. It's something I think you should keep your eyes on. Okay, so this is the Ascendant MC midpoint. So now we have, I hope, a good understanding. So everything that we're thinking about here, just remember, when we look at the planets making contact with it, this is where we are trying to be our true self. This is where our personal and our public image is coming together. So let's try to just keep those things in mind as we're thinking about the planet as it comes into contact. Okay.
That's great advice.
Okay. So now, and the reason I say that is because, and you can stay here, Liz. The reason I say that is because we get lost in the keywords and we forget those basic little principles. And if you take one overriding principle for each planet and you just stick with that, you can go really far in developing a feel for what's happening in a chart or what's happening at a particular time in a chart. Okay, so with the sun, obviously the sun is the center of who you are. That's your core being, that's your purpose, that's your reason for being here. And that sun is going to shine on all of the planets in your particular solar system, aka your natal chart. Okay, so the sun is, when it equals the ascendant or MC, it's a time to shine and be in the spotlight. Now remember, that's your personal and your public image. This is developing who you want the world to see you as. This is in terms of your person and in terms of your profession. So doesn't it make sense that if the sun is shining a light on it, that it's going to do that for the reason of bringing you out so that people can see you? Okay. It also can be a time of clarity of purpose and direction. What if you got on the wrong train when you came up to your MC and Saturn came along as an example, and you were feeling discontent about your profession, so you jumped ship, and then you later discovered, oh crap, I'm on the wrong ship. Well, maybe when the sun equals that midpoint of the ascendant MC between them, maybe this will be a time where your purpose and direction got clarified, and you're going like, I knew I was on the wrong thing. Okay, let's make a course correction right now. Okay. It can also be a time to make an outward push, because now if you're going to be in the spotlight and there's something that you want to do in the world, you're probably going to need other people's help. So this is a time to make the outward push. This is a time to make the connections. This is a time to network. This is a time to do. And isn't it also interesting? Usually the sun, the ascendant MC, is in where? The 11th house. Usually. Isn't that interesting? Because that has to do with contacts and groups and hopes and wishes and all of those types of things. Okay. So it can be a time of growth and achievement. Kind of reaffirm. Let's say you are on the right ship. Now you might get a beginning reward of it, or an additional reward, which you're then going to be able to carry through all the way to the ascendant, and then get another and hit that other peak time where you may get rewarded again. So it's a really good time. But here's the problem. The sun can really heat things up. So you have to be careful. You have to be aware of potential ego conceit, because the sun represents our ego. It's our internal who we are. It's the core of who we want to be. It can be overextending. It could be power struggles, because now you haven't quite come to terms with who you are as a person. Your empowerment is still an issue. Now all of a sudden you're put out there to work to these various groups, but you haven't even become comfortable with working with yourself. If you're not comfortable working with yourself, it's going to be hard to work with other people. Okay. So, and that's what this is about. So the sun could shine some light on those potential issues as well. And if you get those resolved at this particular time, then that can also contribute to some stability of becoming who you want to be, your true sense of self. Okay, does that make sense?
Absolutely. That's great information. I like, because you can see when the sun transits that ascendant MC point, so that midpoint, and that might be a time to launch something.
It could be a time to launch something or further, because that's the idea of the outward push.
Yes.
Okay, or the time of growth and achievement. So this is a time that you want to extend yourself further, because you're feeling like, okay, I'm on the right ship, I'm on the right path. Let's push the path. Let's see how far I can push myself. Let's see how far I can grow as an individual, how far I can extend myself outside of it. And remember, in terms of limitations, we're the one who, generally speaking, sets the limitations that we live within. So this gives you an opportunity to push those limitations out. You're always going to have boundaries, But you get a chance to push those boundaries out a bit and then extend yourself. Okay.
Nice.
All right. Here we are with the moon. Now we know that the moon and the sun are our core of who we are. The sun representing our life purpose, the moon sort of taking that sun energy, kind of giving it form and helping to stabilize sort of the emotional needs that we have at a core level. It's kind of our giving our child an opportunity to grow up. Okay, we don't want to stay our child forever, but our moon represents our child often in our chart. And so this gives us an opportunity to present a sensitive and nurturing self to the world. Okay, because this is our moon. Now, you might say to yourself, but my moon is in Capricorn. Yes, I know, I get it. Mine is too. But that doesn't mean that your moon is still not about sensitive and nurturing and caring about others and all that. It just means that when you put the Capricorn robe on, it's not as easy for you to express it. People look at you with that robe and they go, oh, all of a sudden your face got dour and now you're no longer emoting the way you would if you had a fawning Cancer robe on, as an example. Okay, so this gives you an opportunity to present a sensitive and nurturing self to the world. Okay, it's emotional awareness and sensitivity of self and others. Okay, because obviously the more you are aware of who you are, the easier it is to see other people. If you are not aware of who you are and you have issues, guess what you do? You project them out onto other people, and then you say, they have that problem. It's not me, it's them. Okay, so this gives you an opportunity to look at the mirrors, which are the people that you probably generally criticize, and say, what is it about them that I don't like that actually is something that's in me, and I need to learn about that. Okay. It can also be a time to trust your gut. Sometimes you have an instinct, and your instinct says, I need to do this. But you look around you and you're going like, no, I don't see it. Well, trust your gut. Okay. It can be a time to nurture connection internally, as we said, in terms of self-care. So maybe during that particular time, that's all you do is spend a lot of time on you. It becomes you time. Okay. It's often a time to allow your creative child to come forth. A lot of times when we were kids, we were not allowed to be our moon. Okay, we should have been allowed to be our moon, but we weren't allowed to be our moon. Therefore, our moon is kind of stuck in this frozen space back there in time. And so every time we want our moon to come out, it's still back here. Okay, it never gets a chance to mature. It only gets a chance to mature if we can say, you know what? I had these patterns back here based on this. Let me look at them and see if I think they're going to empower me and move me forward. Why am I still doing that? No. Okay. And you become consciously aware of what this is. Then you can grow and you can change them. Okay. It's part of the clarity of purpose and direction. I kind of mentioned that already. Things you want to be aware of, maybe mood swings. Okay. Or being overly emotionally intense. Okay. Again, if you're overly emotionally intense, generally speaking, it's because you see something in somebody else that you don't like in yourself. I know we don't like this. We all think we're justified for the way we feel and the way we criticize people, but oftentimes the criticism needs to come back here and those fingers need to be pointing this way instead of that way. Okay. And I've learned a lot about myself. Every time I get some situation where I start to criticize someone else, no matter who it is, even if I'm right about it, I'm going, what can I learn about me from this situation? Okay. We are a lot more transparent than we actually think we are. And this is one way that we can see it. Okay. So that's the moon equals the ascendant. Mercury, you know what Mercury is. Everybody who's watching this knows that Mercury is about communication. It's about the way you need to think. It's about learning. It's about language. It's about siblings. It's about all those third house things and all of that. Okay. So now when it hits the ascendant MC, then you're taking all of those things and you are merging them and blending them with the ascendant MC midpoint. So what does that mean? It's a time to expose ideas to a larger audience. Again, remember where the ascendant MC most likely is landing is in the 11th house. The 11th house is the larger audience. Okay, that's what groups and networks and all that are all about. It's an opportunity to communicate clearly and effectively. Okay. It is networking, as we said, larger audience. It's mental acuity. It's, again, just another way, I think, of saying communicate clearly and effectively. It can be thinking strategically. Even if you don't have Earth in your chart, your mind still wants to do things strategically. Okay. Now, it may not be an easy thing for it to do because it doesn't have these innate talents of structure and understanding how to deal with the structure. Okay. If you're Gemini over the top, okay, it's going to be hard for you to think strategically because you're going to be grabbing this and grabbing this and grabbing this and thinking this and thinking this and saying this and saying this and saying this, and you're going to be all over the place. Okay. But at some point, you can sit back with yourself and say, okay, what about this do I want to strategically use? There's an opportunity there to not just be a collector of information, but to be a user of it. And in order to be a user of it, you need to be selective about what you plan on using. That's where the strategic part comes in. It also gives you an opportunity to be creative, a creative thinker, or creative thinking, which meaning thinking outside the box. Now, here's some negatives, though. You need to be aware of overthinking. You need to be aware of overthinking to the point of anxiety. Okay. You need to be careful of how you say things because, again, it's also easy when you're over communicating to create misunderstandings, especially in the day and age that we live in, where if you use one word the wrong way, whew, all of a sudden you can be, I don't want to say it. That's not supposed to be thinning. That should be muddled thinking. I need to correct that. These are all negative sides of it because not, every planet and every aspect and every midpoint always is a two-sided coin. It's never just one side. There's always a head. For every head, there's a tail. Okay, so keep that in mind. If you have something negative in your life going on and Mercury equals your ascendant, then that most likely is going to be the thing that's going to come to the surface at that time that you need to resolve in order for you to move things further. Okay. None of these are out of context. These are always in the context of the life that you're living at that time. Okay, this is not trying to give you a book and say this book says that this is this. No, that's description needed. We need the theory. We need to get examples so that we can fill our head so that our mind starts to understand little bits. But ultimately, we're going to take this and we're going to apply it to the life we're living at that point in time. Okay.
Excellent.
All right. Now, Venus, again, it's kind of the same thing. Venus is a beautiful thing. It can provide a sense of harmony, balance, charm, and social grace at that time to both your personal and public projection. Okay. It could be a creative inspiration that you're now applying. It could be potential popularity because when Venus touches something, it adds grace and it adds this niceness about whatever it comes into contact with. And so therefore, if you are in a public space and you're dealing with people, this could be a time when people see you in a very good light. Okay. So if you do want to make networking opportunity and outreaching, this is the time to do it. Okay. Because Venus is sitting there going, hey, come on, meet me. I'm really nice. Come meet me. It can be a time, obviously, if this is working in your favor, it could be a time of strengthening professional relationships. Because again, it has to do with not just the personal, but the professional aspect of it. Okay. Now, you want to be wary and keep your balance. You want to help others because Venus is also all about help. Remember, it not only rules the second house, which is values and self-worth and all self-esteem, but it rules the seventh house, which is other people. Okay, the seventh is opposite the first. The first is all about me. The seventh is all about you. Okay, the problem is when we're all about you and we forget that there's a me, then we lose me at the expense of you. And we don't want that. So we want to help others without the sense of losing self. And we don't want to hide away in a creative closet because we could feel so inspired by all of this inspiration, all that. We then, rather than, no, okay, let me rephrase that. So normally when you are extending yourself and trying to build yourself professionally and personally, you have to push the boundaries again. When you push the boundaries, that creates stress and tension. Okay, nothing happens without stress and tension. These are uncomfortable feelings. So what if you're not able to deal with these uncomfortable feelings that you need in order to be able to grow yourself? Well, then you go into yourself and then you hide away in your closet. So that's what it's talking about hiding away in a creative closet. Journaling just for the sake of journaling is great, but journaling to hide yourself away from being able to communicate with other people, not so much. Okay, writing a book is great, but if really all you're doing is writing to escape, not so great. Okay, you might become a great creative escape writer that nobody ever sees your work and you never grow anywhere beyond that. That's not helping you. So remember, what we're trying to look at in this particular lecture is that these are all ways of looking at the planets making contact. And when I say contact, this is weather by transit, weather by solar arc. Okay, I don't care, because the planet always stays a planet that it is. It always brings the same stuff. It's just a different context. If it's Venus, it moves so quickly through the chart, not going to be over a point for a very long period of time. But if it's a solar arc, it's going to be there for a good year. Okay, so then you get more out of it. You get more juice, so to speak. Okay, so remember, this is all about growing as a person and trying to become all that you can be in terms of your ascendant and all that you can be in terms of your MC and your midheaven. Okay, now Mars, we know what Mars is. Mars is all about, and it's one of the planets, Sun, Mars, and Jupiter in particular, that provides the energy and thrust in order for us to try to accomplish our purpose. And so this is a time for ambitious action and assertiveness. Mars, its number one keyword is assertive. Okay, that's what it wants you to be. No matter what sign it's in, I don't care if it's in Cancer or Pisces, it wants to be assertive. The problem is when it's in Pisces and Cancer, as we know, there's something that taught it to hold back its assertiveness until something else happens, right? It's all about a time of courage and confidence. And anytime you see Mars anywhere in transits, anywhere in arcs, you just think like, okay, something is being stimulated right now. There's a fire being set underneath in order to get the water boiling so that we can make the soup or the stew, as an example. Okay, it also could be a time of laser-like focus. Okay, because I can apply all my energy just to getting this done. And if I do all of these things, then it's a time of making progress. Okay, now the opposite side of that is, what if my Mars is so assertive and aggressive that I start pissing people off? And I get to the point where, why hasn't what I wanted to happen already? Jesus, John, you told me that if Mars equals my ascendant MC, it's a time for all these great things. Okay, be careful. You have to be wary of being impatient and impulsive. Development takes time. Okay, Mars comes along, stimulates. Okay, the stimulation occurs so that it pushes you into gear to move you forward toward those things that you want to do. Those things that you want to achieve and accomplish are going to take time. Doesn't mean they're going to accomplish right at that moment. Okay. Now, if it's a solar arc, it could very well be that year is very, very important in terms of it. But if it's a transit, again, Mars is going to move around pretty quickly. Okay. So you want to be careful. Back. You want to be careful of not being overly aggressive, overly competitive, or, as another one, moving forward without giving much thought to it. Okay, you feel the impulse, you're so excited by it, you go, and then you later go, what the heck was I aiming for? I didn't even think about that. Oh my God, I should have gave some more thought to this. I could have made something more happen. And the other problem is that you could be so impatient, impulsive, aggressive, and doing all this, that you build toward a potential burnout. Okay, because your energy, burnout is energy that is not being received very well. You're not getting the ambition moved in a direction you want. People are not receiving you the way you thought they were going to. And you're like, why did I spend all this energy? And you're starting to feel anxious, and then that all starts to go inside of you, and then you start to feel burned out. Okay. It's a sign that you're doing too much, that you're doing too fast. You're taking your Mars and you're trying to do it too fast. Okay. All right. Now, Mars is the energy. Jupiter is, we like to say, our hope for reward. It's expanding whatever it touches. It's trying to give you more and a lot more of whatever it is that you say you desire. Okay. So it can suggest a time of growth, expansion, and opportunities. And of course, if it makes sense with the Ascendant MC, because we're talking about our personal, putting ourselves out there, personal and our public, building our business, our career, our status, our reputation, our whatever it is, and being again in the 11th house. And this is a time where it can be rewarded big time. It can be a confidence booster in your own abilities. It almost always, Jupiter, when it touches something, feels like it's a favorable time. It's a time to increase your visibility. So if you were in a closet and you were a little nervous about it, it's a good time to take yourself out of that closet and expose in the areas that you want to see some progress in. It's also possible rewards or recognition. If I see solar arc Jupiter equals ascendant MC, I'm looking for where the reward is coming from. Now, it's going to be at the level of life experience that you have. If you're in a job, it might just be a raise, or you may get a new position inside the company that you're in, where this gives you opportunities to build even further. If you're an actor or a musician or something like this, this could be a time when you get full recognition of yourself as an actor, or maybe you had a movie that came out and everybody loved it, and all of a sudden that made you. It could be those kinds of things. Okay, same thing with a song or something else along that line. If you're an artist, obviously this could be a time when somebody saw your artwork and you started to get recognized. And then the reward comes in. Why? Because the ascendant MC, generally speaking, is in the 11th house. The 11th house is the second of the MC. Therefore, it's the income from the profession. Okay? I know I'm throwing a bunch of things here just to kind of stimulate your thinking, but the houses are amazing how you can move them around in order to see the different patterns. And the 11th house also, that's why they call it hopes and wishes. And the hopes and wishes are, generally speaking, from what you're expecting to get from the profession. Okay.
Exactly.
Go back. Did I finish?
I think so.
So be wary of overconfidence, inflated expectations. Okay, because again, Jupiter is going to expand it. Now, if you have an ego that is just beyond itself, maybe like our president, and Jupiter comes along and touches anything within his ego, it's going to be even bigger. Okay, that could be a bad thing, could be a good thing, depends. It could lead to arrogance, taking on too much. It's another thing, or not feeling recognized for who you are. Again, 11th house feel to it. Okay, now Saturn. Okay, Jupiter expands, tries to give us everything we want, tries to give it us in big, prosperous amounts, wants us, in theory, to be successful and all of that. Saturn comes along and says, okay, but you need some structure. Okay, you need some discipline. If you're going to get all of what you want from Jupiter, you're going to need some self-control. Okay, so Saturn equaling the MC can be a time where if Jupiter felt like, wow, this is really feels like a great time, Saturn equaling that can feel like, oh, why does it feel so heavy? Why are things taking so long? Why does it feel like I have to work so hard? Okay, it could be a time where you actually feel that this is not going to be a very productive time, but yet Saturn is sitting there over your shoulder looking at your work, because remember, Saturn wants perfection. It wants you to be the perfect person in whatever it is you want to be. And so it's sitting there looking at it and scrutinizing you and going like, okay. So it often can feel like a challenging time with reward and or obstacles. So let's say that you already happen to have the ability to be self-disciplined and work for the long haul, and you thrive on obstacles. Well, maybe when Saturn hits the Ascendant MC point, this is just going to be another nice cycle for you because you're used to that. But if you're not used to that, that's where it becomes a little challenging. It's personal, professional development and maturity. Okay. Saturn's trying to get you to grow up. Okay. In psychology, Saturn represents the parent. The moon represents the child. Okay. So the moon wants to be the child. Saturn's going like, I'm the parent. No, 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 you can't be the child. So this is where this all comes from. It goes back to those psychological meanings. Saturn represents responsibility. So this could be a time of more responsibility. Okay. It can be possible leadership within your ambition. Again, leadership because of the rewards of the profession, but also because, again, it sort of has 11th house feel to it. Okay. How can you be a leader if you're not leading a group of someone's? Okay. It could be long-term goals and strategies in order to manifest them. So here is where you start to see that, okay, where I want to be is here, but this is where I am. So there's quite a gap between it. How do I get there? Okay, so then the long-term goals and strategies kick in. So this is what Saturn equals MC, Ascendant MC can often be about. But again, it's the same problem. You have to be wary of overwork because Saturn is going to demand that you put in the time. Okay, it can be overcommitment again, but in a different way. It could be fear of failure that rises to the top. Okay, because you could be looking at this gap between where you are and where you want to be, and you're going, I just don't see how I can get there. Okay. And if that happens, then what you need to do is step back to where you are, go back to a prior something that you wanted to achieve, look at what the gap was then, and look at the fact that you've already achieved it and say, how did I do that? And then take them and do the same thing or be even more effective about it. Okay, because we often have lots of successes in our life that we just take for granted. And the things that got us to that success are the same things that we need to use moving forward. So we just need to do a little introspection. Okay, it could be career frustration because, again, maybe you're not. This is going to also bring out the point that you're on the wrong ship or you took the wrong train and you're going in the wrong direction. Well, this might be a course correction time as well. And it can even be isolation or loneliness. Again, before we were talking about being in the closet. Well, if your Venus in the closet, you're being creative. If Jupiter's in the closet, you're feeling good. You might be reading books and learning stuff and learning a new thing. But when Saturn's in the closet, this is tough. Okay. And this is where we get loneliness from and isolation and those kinds of things. So we want to be careful of not doing that. Again, I've made a point here about the midpoint between the two transit peaks because Saturn is our chief measure that we look at when we're trying to understand the ambition cycle that goes around every 28 to 30 years and then repeats itself when Saturn comes back to itself and starts the whole thing all over again. Okay. And that's just a little quick note to remind myself of that. All right. So that's Saturn. So Saturn makes things a little bit challenging. Now, Uranus, as you know, in the original astrology, we had Sun through Saturn, all the planets we could visually see with our eyes. Some people could see Uranus, most people couldn't. So Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto are the planets that we needed something else to help us see them. Okay, so they represent the things that are kind of in the dark. That's why we often associate them with the unconscious. Uranus comes along right after Saturn. So Saturn says, okay, we have these boundaries. You have to learn to live within these boundaries and you need to stay there. And as long as you stay there, life is going to be great. But guess what? Your Uranus is saying to yourself, you know what? No, I don't want to stifle my boundaries. I want to push them out even further. In fact, I want to break my boundaries down. So Uranus comes along and smashes through those boundaries and tries to create a whole new time for change. Okay. So then we can see things like independence becoming a common theme during that time and personal freedom. We could get the sense of, let's say we had a Saturn one before this and we were feeling like, you know what, I'm on the wrong track and I'm doing things and being somebody that I don't want to be. Well, Uranus comes along and saying, okay, let's resolve that. Let's be authentically you. And hopefully by being authentically you, you're going to get rewarded for being that way. You may not. You may not get rewarded for being authentically you. But if you want to be true to yourself, you have to do it. Because if you don't do it, you're going to be unhappy. It can be a sudden insight or a sudden innovation that comes out, the start of it. Because we generally see with Uranus with the lightning bolt coming down and okay. But that is just the idea. That's the flash of brilliance. It takes time for the idea and the brilliance to manifest. Okay. It can be in our day and age in particular, it's often going to be new technological breakthroughs. The negative side of that is we need to be wary of being rebellious, restless. It can be a time of disruption because obviously, you know, I can think of different examples, but let's say you're in a family structure and your family's used to you being a certain way for 30 years, and then all of a sudden, seemingly overnight, you change and you start acting a different way. Okay, that creates the perception of disruption. It may not be the disruption with you, but it may be how others see you. Okay, or even worse, if you have Uranus and it's trying to make a time for change and help you to become authentic, and then you resist the change. Okay, that's not going to be easy time for you, and you don't want to be doing that. So this is what you want to be aware of when Uranus is coming along, hitting the ascendant MC. Again, if it's even by transit now, from pretty much from Jupiter out, now we're seeing a time where the transit can be over this point back and forth for quite a while. So if we have a solar arc, which is possible, hitting this point, and we have a transit of an outer planet hitting this point, now we're getting a double dose of it. So this has got to be an important time for us, and we need to appreciate it and receive it as such and give it a lot of our energy and thought. Okay. Now, Uranus came along and said, you will be all that you can be. Okay. The military stole that, be all that you can be, and try to assign it to soldiers. And it's true that with a soldier, you can be all you can be, but only what they tell you you can be. Uranus doesn't want somebody telling them what they can be. They want to be all they can be without the government telling them you can be this. Okay. Now, sometimes things don't work out the way you want. Sometimes in this world, we're totally focused on only a certain part of the world. In our day and age, in particular, the materialism of it. We often neglect other aspects of ourselves. We fail to realize that we are spiritual beings living in a material world. Okay. And from a Christian standpoint, which I am, that means my experience with God and my relationship with him and how I design and plan my life in terms of what those rules may be. You may have a different version of that. And so are you living true to your spiritual self? Okay, because if you're not living true to your spiritual self, Neptune has a way of coming along. And so we had Saturn that created these boundaries. We had Uranus that came along and threw a lightning bolt into one of the walls and opened up a new wall. And Neptune comes along and saying, mm-mm, and it dissolves the boundary. Okay. Now, when it dissolves the boundary, what's going to come up out of that? We don't know. And that creates that confusing time because now the boundary is not there the way it was, and we don't know what it means. So now we're a little bit confused about it, right? So, but again, something that I don't generally talk about in a consultation is the spiritual side of it, but that's there. Okay, because if you are also on the wrong path spiritually, you are not going to feel good about that. You're going to be a self-divided against itself. You're going to be trying to be this, but the other side's trying to be this. And now you're trying to move in two directions at the same time. Okay, they need to come closer together, more in alignment. In psychosynthesis, you try to align with your core self on the inside. Okay. So it's a time for compassion and empathy. Now, where does the compassion and empathy start? It starts with yourself. Because if you can feel compassion and empathy for yourself, you can feel it with others. Okay. If you're feeling it with others about not feeling yourself, you're probably feeling sympathy. Okay. Which is not the same thing. It can be a time of spiritual reconnection. It can be a time of seeing with new eyes, of imagination and visioneering. Okay. Because Neptune, think about it. Neptune represents the motion picture industry. If you look at a movie, what is a movie? Basically, you watch a movie, you are seeing a preview of coming attractions, and by the end of it, you've seen the whole movie. You get to do this in your mind to whatever it is that you want to accomplish in your life. You can actually sit there and say, like I did, I drew a picture of how I wanted Astro Peregrine screens to look. And I had a vision of the way I wanted the software to operate before I wrote one line of code. I have notebooks with all of the drawings in it. That was me using my Neptune and visioneering and seeing something that didn't exist yet before it wound up becoming existent. Okay. So this gave me the vision to guide my Saturn work. Okay. So my boundaries became more Neptunian. Think about it if you're an artist and you have Neptune equals this got to be an excellent time if you're in tune. Anytime you're in tune with the planet, when it hits this point, it's going to be easier. If you're out of tune, then obviously, and things are going to be discordant. Okay, there's going to be struggle involved. It's not a good or bad thing. It's I'm in sync with it or I'm not in sync with it. If I'm not in sync with it, struggle. If I'm in sync with it, probably not going to struggle too much. Okay. It's the mystical meets the mundane. And again, we already talked about some of this. So be wary of the confusion. The other thing with Neptune, especially with transits, is it often will go back and forth over a sensitive point 2 or 3 years. Okay, and it'll go across direct and it'll come across retrograde and it'll come across back over it. And once it gets past it, then whatever that was, it's sort of encapsulated. And then you take that with you and you move it forward and bring it forward in your growth. Okay, so during that time, it can be bewildering because the other thing is you often have this Neptunian, it brings things you never thought about and you don't know how you're going to accomplish it. You can see it. You can feel it. You can trust it. Okay. But trust is an interesting thing, isn't it? Trust is faith. Okay. Neptune is potentially faith. If you really can believe it. So if you can see it and believe it, then you can achieve it. Okay. That old expression that I built my life around. It also, if you're not feeling it and you're not in a position to allow Neptune to speak, then it can be escapism. Escapism can be anything from alcohol, drugs, promiscuity, whatever you're doing, not for the benefit of this helping you, but just so that you don't have to think about what's making you uncomfortable. Okay, I don't want to put a judgment on any of those things because the thing in itself is not the problem. The problem is what you're running away from. Okay. Cloudy thinking. This is another one because it's so unclear. Your thinking is cloudy. It's like there's a blur. Or think of the 12th house. What do we often say about the 12th house? There's a veil. You're looking through the veil and not seeing clearly. Okay. This is Neptune over something. You can often feel like a victim. Okay. Things are not happening to you and you get victimized by it. And if you're feeling like a victim, chances are you can easily be taken advantage of or feel like you're being taken advantage of. Okay.
Okay.
All right. And then we're getting down there. So don't worry. Don't fall asleep, everyone. This is a lot of text, but my hope is that you'll go back, you'll look at each screen, and then you'll study it, feel it, make notes about it. And then I'll talk a little bit later about the book again. There's lots of example charts where you can find these, but if I would have added them in, this would have doubled or tripled the time we would have been on this, and that's too much time. So now we're looking at Pluto. Pluto is all about empowerment. It's about, and what does empowerment mean? And how do you feel empowered? Well, generally speaking, you come to terms with those things that early in your life made you feel disempowered. You bring them out. So in my case, it would have been my fatherly experiences as an example, okay, which then resulted in me having a big chip on my shoulder, which then resulted in me being anti-authoritarian and then stupidly joining the military with that attitude and getting into trouble a few times and so on and so forth, and taking me 40 years before I finally overcame this attitude that I have when I realized that it no longer served me. And so I gave up on it. And then I started to actually learn how to empower myself. And Pluto empowerment often happens to kind of be a mercurial event because it has to do with perspective changes. Okay. And so this is a time for deep change and empowerment. And this could be challenging introspection because Pluto's going to force you down under in the deepest parts of yourself to see what's there. Things that you often may not even want to look at, things that you don't want to see about yourself. And if you don't want to see those things about yourself, then I promise you, you easily see them in other people and they piss you to hell off. Okay. Those are, again, this is a really good way of understanding what your Pluto issues are. It can be a time of great intensity because Pluto intensifies what it is. Pluto is an adverb. It's how much of something. It's how deep do we go? How high do we climb? How wide is it that I'm going to try to, see or whatever? It's a depth of stuff that you don't get from the other planets. That little teeny planet, well, now I guess they call it a dwarf planet. And I promise you, Pluto is pissed off and is going to make itself known for being once again, relegated down to almost the unconscious. We haven't quite put it in the unconscious. Where was it prior to when it was discovered? No one knew. Okay. But the unconscious came afterwards. Anyways, personal empowerment, unwavering goal pursuit. So Pluto can be used in order to give you a long-term, deep, intense movement towards something that you want. So it's kind of like if you have Saturn, Pluto midpoint, and you learn to deal with your Pluto, that can be a really good midpoint to have because it means that if you really put in the time and you really, really work on it and you don't quit and you keep going and you give it enough time to grow, then Pluto is going to make it happen. Okay. It's the same thing here. But here's the other side of it. If you're not ready with your Pluto, then what's going to happen? Well, if you're trying to deal with your own empowerment issues and your own power issues, then the chances are, if you don't understand that dynamic, you're going to have power struggles with other people because you're going to be projecting your power struggles out onto them and you're going to see them in places. I knew they were going to act this way. I knew this was going to happen to me. Okay. It can be a time of intense emotions. It also can be a fear of change. Okay. Because you have to deal with your deepest core self first in order for the change to happen. And a lot of people are scared about that, afraid of it. It can also be a time of crises. Okay. And again, Pluto is going to stay over there. I saw in the next few years, it's going to, I forget what year it is. It's going to go over a point 5 times. It's going to be like 4 or 5 years over this point. So if you have a sensitive point and Pluto's coming over it, oh my God, that's going to be a really deep time of growth potential. But it's going to be not so easy to go through it at that time as well, unless you're already a Plutonian person. Maybe you already learned how to deal with it, um, at least to some level. I don't think anyone ever learns to deal with all of their Plutonian stuff. Okay. I don't think we have any questions, or you would have asked them.
Right. No questions today.
Okay, go back. We have one
Oh,
more.
oh sorry.
Okay, I was going to put the nodes on here and a few others, but I decided today to focus on one that you don't usually see, which is the Aries point. Now, remember, the Aries point is any point that's at zero cardinal. So zero Aries, zero Cancer, zero Libra, zero Capricorn. Okay. So if the Aries point is coming along in the chart and it's at zero Aries, and let's say your ascendant MC is somewhere close to zero Aries, then this could be a time of new beginnings and an energetic thrust because it brings a Martian like energies to it. I mean, hell, it represents spring. Okay, the very first point. It's also a time when there's potential visibility and popularity again, because now the Aries point is the point where things want to be brought out into the open. So now what are you bringing out to the open? Your true self, your true you, who you want to be. Hopefully after you got through your Uranus, the authentic true you. Okay. It can also be a turning point. It can be a time where there's balance brought into the personal and public life. And again, it's the same sort of thing. You want to be wary about being impulsive because it has a Martian. If it were Cancer, it would have an overly emotional potential. Okay, with Libra, people don't know this about Libra or Venus, and when it's in Libra, as an example. But that's one of the most Martian signs that Libra can possibly be in its own right. If you go back and you study all the mythology and stuff, Venus was a warrior as well. Okay, and if you look at some of the most what's the word I want to say, violent people that were around in history, go see how much Libra they have. You'll be shocked. Hitler's a good example of it. Okay, and there's others. So you want to be wary about being impulsive, impatient, overwhelmed, aggressive, clashing with authority figures of the status quo, and especially to clash. Imagine clashing with authority figures in the status quo at a time when it's trying to bring this out to the public and you become known for it. Do you really want to do it at that time? Well, maybe if you're an activist or something, that might be a time to do it. Okay, but you have to be careful about the way you assert on this point because it can be a time that marks your life for a while, um, and maybe you don't get much further from it as a result of it. So, anyways, thought I would add that in there as kind of a little adjunct to it. And that's it. Now, next one. Again, I keep recommending this book, and I've read through this book. I've read the book several times in the past, and when I was reviewing my own knowledge about midpoints, I scanned through it again, and I'm constantly amazed at how good this book is, how easy it is to understand. So again, if you can find this book on Amazon or Half Price Books or one of these other places, by all means, make sure that you get Don McBroom's book. And the other advantage is that all of the things that I showed you today, he also covers them in his book completely. Not, I don't want to say completely different, but I think very different interpretations because he does it through the approach that works with him. But he gives lots of chart examples. He gives the name of different people under each one. And I thought about doing this again, but the reason I couldn't do it was because it was going to take me, I estimated 2 to 5 hours to find them all. And I didn't have that block of time to do it. So I am recommending that as an extended assignment for this particular lecture, you definitely go and get the book and then look up those particular midpoints and then look up the people he mentioned, then go and see how it manifested in their lives. Because I think it'd be quite instructive.
Well, thank you, John. That was a very informative talk, and I really appreciate you joining me today. And I want to thank our audience that joined live, and I look forward to having you back. And then we have the information page for your Astro Peregrine software if you want to tell our audience about that.
Oh, just if you're interested in software that runs on Mac or Windows does 95% of what you need to do as a practicing astrologer. Then I recommend you go take a look at astroperegrine.com. If you're interested in private lessons one-on-one, you can look at my jmastro.com/private-classes, and you'll see the slide in the video when you rewatch it. If you want to book a demo, you can go book a demo. If you want to buy the program, there is, if you use one of these discounts, if you buy the core, you can get 12% off. And if you buy the bundle, you get 20% off. And the bundle gives you the, not only the program, but it gives you the astrocartography module.
Yeah, great software. I'm enjoying starting to use it myself. And I have a variety of other shows that are here. I have the Astrology Star Sisters with a variety of topics and a monthly forecast and a full moon forecast. So there's lots of shows to try out and check them out. And thanks again, John, for joining me today. And we're going to say goodbye.
Thank you, Liz.
And we'll see you all next time.